Ooh, auto chaps, I'm MagicalMike. What do we think about the Elder Scrolls Online? I want to know what you guys think, because opinion is generally quite split very evenly. A lot of people really love the game, and a lot of people are really disappointed with it. Personally, I'm having a hard time coming to a proper conclusion. For the most part, I don't really like it, but occasionally I find myself having quite a bit of fun playing the game. It's hard to explain, and with my opinion sort of flip-flopping between love and hate, it makes explaining myself very difficult, but let's try anyway in this video. Let's get this point clear though. Those of you looking for the Elder Scrolls 6, if you think this game might be it, it's not. If you're looking for Skyrim version 2.0, then don't bother. The MMO aspects of the game interfere with the desire for the Elder Scrolls gameplay. If you're someone who's looking for the next big MMO though, it's kind of unclear to me if this is it. It certainly plays a lot like an MMO, and I'm always aware of that fact. It feels like I'm playing an MMO, not just because of the players, but because of the design and the environments and the way loot works and skills and gameplay, and everything just sort of adds up. And I'm not sure I like that feel very much. So if you're looking for another MMO to get into, like I said, this might be it. It's hard for me to really say because I've had so little experience with MMOs, but I would advise you to watch a few more opinion videos like this one before you make the call to buy in. If you're looking for PvP, again, this might be something to do some research into. While I haven't played it personally, from what I've seen of it, the PvP looks like it could be on par with Guild Wars 2's World vs World. Everyone that I've spoken to has enjoyed it, and it looks fairly promising. The keep and the building control mechanics look solid, but the actual player killing leaves me wondering how good it really is to actually play. It could be clunky, I don't know. Again, you're going to have to check out some other people's opinions before you spend your money. One person I'd recommend watching in particular is a YouTuber by the name of Gix. You'll find he has a long set of opinion and review type videos that are well put together and worth watching. He talks about a lot of different things, he really knows what he's talking about when he does so, and I'd really recommend listening to him. I'll leave a link to the first video in his series in the description, I hope, if I remember. I probably have remembered, I'm not stupid. Those of you who are looking for another Elder Scrolls world to explore with friends, probably casually, and you want to take your time and enjoy the vistas, you guys are the ones who are going to enjoy playing this game the most. The areas, while graphically worse than that of Skyrim, to be expected, it is an MMO after all, are still very well designed and filled out with stuff to look at and explore. I found that the most fun I had while playing the game was just exploring and finding cool stuff to look at. Exploring a more colourful looking version of Morrowind was fun, and going back to Ayleid Ruins was a treat, and finding lore books and references to things in the other games really added a level of detail that kept me playing. On that note, there's these things you can find called sky shards. And these are basically like skill points in Guild Wars 2 if you've played it, except you need to find 3 of them for every 1 skill point. They're always hidden in the environment, and you can find hints to where they are in your journal. And these hints are generally good enough to the point where you can actually find where you're going, they point you in the right direction of these shards, but they also stay cryptic enough to keep you interested and not just flat out tell you exactly where they are on the map. And I liked seeking them out, it was fun. It was a good reason to keep me actually taking in the world, rather than just sort of playing the game and sort of glancing at it like you do in most others. Lore books are in a similar vein to that. You can find them all over the place, and when you do, they get copied into your journal, so that you don't need to carry an entire library around with you in your inventory, and so that you don't have to read them on the spot, so that you can go read them in safe places instead of during a dungeon or surrounded by enemies or, stuff like that, instead of keeping your friends waiting for you. Speaking of lore though, I honestly paid barely any attention to what the story was. This is because if I do decide to play the game eventually, I won't have already spoiled everything for myself. From what little I did pay attention to, the story at least looks somewhat compelling for me to experience. However, I have been told that the lore is horrible by some people, and on the other side of the fence, really good by others. I don't know, I can't really comment after not listening to it, but I have to make mention that the lore is in contention with some people, that some people have complained that ZeniMax have ruined the Elder Scrolls lore as a whole by making this a prequel to everything and just messing stuff up. I don't really know. If you don't mind that it could potentially do that and mess up the timelines of the other games, but it could still be its own decent storyline, then you'll probably enjoy the experience like I did. The voice actors in particular are generally pretty entertaining too, and as soon as I heard John Cleese talk, I was quite happy with that. I was impressed. While there are some terrible voice actors in some places, for the most part I'm quite happy with how it's gone. So that's overall stuff I've talked about there. There's a lot of it, and there's a lot of ifs and buts that I just went over. The combat and overall feel of the gameplay is what I want to talk about next though, and for me, this is where the game takes a turn for the worse. If I can enjoy the story and the exploration enough, the combat should be negligible, but for the price of the box and a subscription fee, I just have to say no to it. If the game loses its sub fee and goes the way of Guild Wars 2, or goes entirely free to play, then I'd strongly consider playing it and recommending it just for the story. But let me try and explain what I mean with the combat and interactions with the environment. Firstly, it feels sort of... It's hard to explain, but I've heard from a few people that pressing E on things and interacting with them feels like it takes a second to register that you've pressed the button and actually do the action. And it isn't lag. It feels different. It's just something not quite responsive within the game engine, and it feels wrong. That's a minor complaint, but it's worth mentioning, and it's really strange, and I can't really explain it very well, but a few people have confirmed that they agree with me in this aspect. Chests and gatherables can only be used by one person. This is also another large complaint that I have with the game. I don't like how that pans out. Sure, it encourages friendliness and cooperation, and also a bit of competition to liven things up, but the way Guild Wars 2 handles all nodes as everyone can get the same one, I feel is much better for cooperation and just causes less problems. On launch you're going to have a huge problem with just everything being gone. Nobody's going to leave a thing untouched, and that could cause problems? I don't know. I just don't like the way it's handled. Lockpicking is a nice distraction, and at first it's quite confusing, but once you know how it works, it's good to see it back in the game. It's kind of like the Oblivion system with a timer, and it's kind of hard for me to explain, but I think that there aren't enough opportunities to actually use it and get some practice in, never mind enough opportunities to actually buy some lockpicks and things. You end up running out quite quickly, and you only really use it for opening chests in the world, which again other people can steal, so you may or may not even find a bunch of chances to use it. I don't know, it just depends on your luck, I suppose. Maybe during the Thieves Guild quests they give you a bunch more things to lockpick, but I never actually found that quest line, so I can't confirm or deny that. Oh, and yes, the Mages Guild, the Fighters Guild, Werewolves, and Vampires are actually guilds now as well, and I think the Dark Brotherhood and something else I'm maybe forgetting. Those are all in the game, and they offer their own specific skills to learn, the skill trees and the quests to do and stories and things like that. It's pretty good for variety, and soon you'll find yourself wanting more and more skill points to learn all the cool new skills that you get, and I've heard that some of those skills are actually really great. They could be better than actual class skills. I don't really know. I only invested in Persuasion in the Mages Guild quest line so that I could finish another quest, so I don't really know. However, you can only equip 5 active skills at a time, plus your ultimate skill, which is a massive disappointment for me because I always played the other Scrolls games with a ton of hotkeys. I would always mod that so that I would have even more hotkeys, and here I'm just so limited. True, you can change these skills out whenever you want to, but in combat you can't, and I don't like how limited that is. There are also passive skills that you can invest into, which are never particularly interesting, but it's worth mentioning that you can. Onto combat though, itself comes down to 3 styles as it normally does. You've got bows and sneaky stuff, you've got swords, shields, dual wielding melee style, and you've got magic. Out of the 3, Ranged bow combat was the worst, outright, easily. The bow skills themselves all felt like they were just small variations of shoot arrow, which is pretty obvious, but they all looked and felt really dull. My regular shot looked the same as my poison arrow, for example, except it was a bit slower, and my volley of arrows shot only a single arrow into the air, sort of like pew, and then in the animation it rains tons and tons of arrows down, and it's kind of strange. While I can suspend my disbelief, it just looks kind of shoddy somehow, especially after using the skill Barrage on the Ranger Longbow in Guild Wars 2, where you actually sit down and fire a bunch of arrows into the air. Scattershot, arrow spray and sniper shot all felt the same as well, just ping, shoot arrow, do some damage, in different ways. While they're all different skills and they're all useful for different things, they just weren't interesting to use. I'm a huge fan of sneak attacks in the single player games. It feels really satisfying to snipe a guy at long range and not alert his friends, but it just doesn't feel as powerful here. You can do sneak attacks, and obviously this is for balance reasons, but I just wasn't enjoying it as much. The equivalent in ESO is to basically do a sneak attack, do a bunch of damage when you can, and then fire a quick, like, poison arrow or something to do the rest of the health bar. But if you've aggroed anyone else while performing those actions, you then can't sneak again. That's how that system kind of works. The other skills that I had as a Nightblade were things like a stealth, so I could sneak attack again in combat. So there is a way to do it, but only as a Nightblade. I had a health siphon ability that was quite nice, so I never actually used any health potions in the game. And I had a melee range stun, which felt okay, but I never really felt any reason to actually use it, unless I just felt fancy or whatever. These can all be used with melee weapons too, apart from like poison arrow and stuff like that, because those are bow skills, which made the class very versatile, and most people I saw were playing the Nightblade, so it was a very popular class to play. The starter area for the Dominion was also very well made. It was bright, it was full of stuff to do, it felt very open world, and yet it also led me through all the quests very well, so I never missed anything, yet still did everything in different orders the few times I played it, and I did play it 2 or 3 times with different characters. The Morrowind area I can't really comment on because I didn't play it, but from what I've seen it looked somewhere in between the two. It looked better than the Skyrim area, but it didn't look quite as good as the Dominion area. In stark contrast to the Dominion area, the Skyrim one for the Ebonheart Pact was lacking a lot. It felt empty. There was not nearly enough stuff to do, to look at, or to kill, and I found myself playing Running Simulator for quite a lot of my time. I played a Templar, and I played a Dragon Knight as melee characters. The Templar was really the worst of the bunch of both melee and magic styles. It used some incredibly average spells, boring animations, and the most generic melee attacks possible. The footage that you're looking at should have, or should be currently showing, the Dragon Knight class. I'm actually recording this commentary before editing the footage in, so I'm not sure, but you should be seeing that now. Anyway, this class felt really quite powerful. My pull and my Searing Strike did a hefty amount of damage, along with my stuns, my taunts from the one-handed skill tree. I could also unleash a really devastating set of attack combos, and it generally felt like more of a tank/DPS hybrid. It felt like you could build it either way. My character felt like a good example of how you can still build your character how you want, just like you can in Skyrim and Oblivion, if I remember rightly. I don't know, I can't remember. The skills themselves looked good enough for fancy melee attacks, which surpassed the lame bow animations entirely. Now, while there obviously isn't that much of a variety of melee attacks that you can do, these ones still looked better than the bow stuff. However, I did start encountering problems with melee when I encountered the lack of collision detection, which I have complained about previously. They have apparently added collision detection in as a feature to the game, but I'm not too interested about that. It's not that big of a deal, it just feels kind of strange, and while it will fix some things when you play it with collision detection, I feel like it's already soured it for me a little bit. And even with collision detection, the combat will still feel very floaty and light when not using the skills on your skill bar. At least that's how it did for me. Regular and heavy melee attacks felt like they had a lack of impact, both visually and audibly, and I was quite dissatisfied with how it felt to play in melee. The Templar felt worse for it because I didn't have any hard-hitting skills, but both classes and my dual-wielding Nightblade all encountered the same problem. I didn't feel like I was hitting things very hard, but the amount of damage that an enemy would take felt kind of unbalanced almost. Like, I would hit it not very hard, and it would take most of its life in this single hit, and it didn't feel very good to me. As well, I started playing more and more in third person. At first, I was fine with first person, and really quite enjoyed that it still felt very familiar to the previous Elder Scrolls games. But as time went on though, more and more I was encountering frustrations with losing sight of my enemies and getting strafed and things like that, moving through my enemies or getting knocked around and losing sight of them or whatever. The first person view was limiting my effectiveness, and it was becoming more annoying rather than immersive. And I had to make a compromise and went into third person, which didn't feel very enjoyable at first, but as I played more and more it felt like it got better and I got more used to it. I still don't think that I'd enjoy it as much as playing in first person, but it also sounds really stupid to complain about, but I played all the other Scrolls in first person and never encountered these problems before. I'm not really sure why I do in Elder Scrolls Online. Again, it's another one of those weird things that's hard to explain, and you really have to kind of play it yourself to figure out what the hell I'm talking about. The final combat style is magic, and I played a sorcerer in the Somerset Isles areas. As I said before, the places looked really great. I loved exploring these zones. I loved finding alien ruins. It was a really good nostalgia trip back to Oblivion, and I felt that ZeniMax had clearly put more time and effort into these starting zones. While Skyrim felt completely empty, I was never without something to do as an altmer. I still have one problem with the world though, and that was present everywhere no matter where I went. There was not enough meaningful loot, and there's too much clutter items that can't actually be interacted with. I really hated, for example, looking at a weapon rack that was full of stuff, and not being able to interact with it, or take any items from it, or do anything with it. I hated finding dead people with corpses, and they're clearly wearing a bunch of armour that I could just take off them, but you can't interact with them, and that's kind of annoying. Anyway, as a sorcerer, I had a ton of variety with my spells. I could summon a Daedra. At first that was a scamp, that was later a clan fear to help me out. I could lay down walls of fire, frost and electricity. I could knock stuff back, disorient them, freeze them, all sorts of stuff. I could put damage over time spells on them. I could make people explode with electricity. I could even summon a Storm Atronach too, as my ultimate, which was really cool. There was a bunch of stuff that I could do, and most of the spells had really cool looking effects to them. I was actually really satisfied with my spell choices in the end. It was always difficult to decide where to spend my skill points, which is a good thing. Too much choice is more fun than not enough choice, that's for sure. And with all that variety, you can also have more in the way of morphing skills. Like I said, at first my summon was a scamp, and at a certain skill level, with those skills you can then spend a point to change them in some way, which is called morphing. My choices with this skill were to either have a clan fear, or to have an exploding scamp. All skills can morph in different ways, and the choices you make can really change the gameplay for you. For example, I could have taken the exploding scamp and gone for an AoE heavy set of choices to damage all the mobs at once, but keep them all alive, hitting the scamp and then have the scamp explode and do the finishing blow. Or I could have gone, which is what I did by the way, I could have gone this route and gone for a more focused direct damage to single enemies. As it happened, I just kind of hybrided and did sort of both without really realising and really making those choices. I do like how much promise the morphing system has, and I look forward to seeing some really fantastic looking combos come out of it. What I'm not sure about is respecking your choices. I don't know if that's possible to do, so you either have to be very, very careful not to make a poor choice, or hope that respecking is a thing in the game and that you can just respec for a price whenever you want to. And that's combat really. Those are my impressions. They're very generalised and I'm sure I'm forgetting a ton of stuff, but this video has gotten quite long and I want to kind of wrap it up now. My overall impressions of the game are still on the fence. I'm not sure how much I really actually enjoyed the gameplay, which is a strange thing to think about, and I really think the newness of the game was what was carrying it for me. I'm not sure that I would still feel the same after playing it for a week, for example. The bottom line for me is very simple though. I am not willing to pay for the box and the subscription fee. I think that I'll give ESO a miss for now, and if it ever goes free to play, or just pay for the box, or if there's a sale on or something like that, then I would recommend it, and I think it would be well worth playing through just for the story, if nothing else. And to see your character level up and things like that, I suppose. That's the verdict for me, but again, if you are interested in the game, I would recommend watching other people's videos, definitely read some reviews, really just make sure that you do some research and make an informed decision before you spend your money. I don't want anybody to be disappointed by this game, and that's why I'm doing this video. So, hopefully I've gotten something interesting across, hopefully I've made my points clear enough, and given you some information to make some decisions on, and that's it. Thanks for listening to me ramble. I've been MagicalMike, and I will see you guys next time.